I've been walking this planet for 6 decades now. 60 years of stories, faces, and memories that shaped who I am. And if there's one truth I've learned, it's this: loneliness doesn't always mean being alone. Sometimes it's sitting in a crowded room, smiling, talking, laughing, while a quiet emptiness lingers inside you. A silence that no applause, no fame, no spotlight can drown out. I'm Keanu Reeves. You know me as an actor, the guy from the movies, the one on the posters, the interviews, the red carpets. But behind all that, there's just me. A man who's learned that success doesn't erase pain, and that love, real love, can be both your greatest strength and your deepest wound. For most of my life, I've been good at pretending. Smiling through interviews, telling people I'm fine, that I enjoy being alone. But the truth, I'm not fine. I never really was. I'm tired of pretending that solitude doesn't hurt, because it does. And maybe it's time I admit that, not just to the world, but to myself. I've lost people I've loved deeply. I've watched relationships fade in my hands, powerless to stop them. I've stayed up through nights that seemed endless, wondering if this, the emptiness, is how my life would end. Alone, but surrounded by memories of what could have been. But here's the thing, those losses, as painful as they were, changed me. They forced me to see love differently. Not as something to chase, but as something to understand. I realized that love isn't about avoiding pain. It's about accepting that pain is part of the journey. For years, I thought I was running from heartbreak. But the truth is, I was running from intimacy, from the fear of opening my heart only to have it shattered again. And yet, something shifted in me recently. Maybe it's turning 60. Maybe it's realizing that time doesn't stop for any of us. Or maybe it's just that I'm finally tired of being my own barrier to happiness. Because now, I want to talk about something I've never really opened up about before. Something deeper than fame, deeper than loss. What love has taught me, what pain has revealed, and what I'm truly searching for in a partner. Love, to me, isn't about perfection anymore. It's about understanding. It's about two flawed souls choosing to face the chaos of life together, hand in hand, even when it hurts. And I had to lose everything to learn that. So, if you let me, I want to take you on that journey. From the laughter of youth to the silence of loss, from the walls I built around my heart to the slow, fragile act of tearing them down again. Because behind the actor, behind the image, there's just a man who still believes, against all odds, that love is worth trying for. But that belief, it didn't come easy. It started with one phone call, a moment that shattered my world and taught me what love and loss truly mean. I remember 1993 like it was yesterday. I was 29 years old, young, reckless, and still figuring out who I was outside of the characters I played. Life back then felt wide open, like the world was this massive, unwritten script waiting for me to fill it. One of the brightest parts of those years was my friendship with River Phoenix. He wasn't just a co-star or another Hollywood name, he was family. There was something pure about him, something untouched by the artificial shine of fame. River had this incredible way of making every person feel seen, really seen, and when you were around him, you believed in goodness again. We'd sit for hours talking about everything: acting, philosophy, the absurdity of the business we were in, and what it meant to stay human in a world that constantly demanded perfection. I remember thinking he was one of those rare souls who could see life through a completely different lens. His passion for music, his love for people, his unshakable sense of purpose, it was contagious. He dreamed about doing movies that mattered, about using his voice to bring light into dark places. He wanted to build a world that was honest and kind, and I believed he could. Back then, we were at the height of our youth, invincible in the way only 20-somethings can be. We thought we had time, endless, infinite time, to chase every dream and fix every broken thing. But life, as I learned that year, doesn't always wait for you to be ready. On the night of October 30th, I got a call that I will never forget. It was past midnight when the phone rang, and something in me froze before I even picked it up. The voice on the other end was trembling. River had collapsed outside the Viper Room in West Hollywood. They said it was an overdose. I remember my heart stopping for a second, refusing to believe what I was hearing. When I got to the hospital, the air felt thick, like the walls themselves were holding their breath. But it was too late. River was gone. My best friend, my brother in spirit, my mirror in so many ways, gone. And in that silence, I realized I had missed my last chance to see him alive. We were supposed to meet earlier that night. I had cancelled because of some work commitment I thought was too important to skip. That decision haunted me for years. I held his hand in that cold hospital room, whispering apologies to someone who could no longer hear them. I kept replaying every conversation we ever had, searching for clues, for signs that maybe I could have stopped it, that maybe I should have known. But the truth was simple and cruel. I couldn't save him. I couldn't save anyone. That night broke something inside me. It made me believe that love meant loss, that caring for someone meant eventually having to say goodbye. And when you start believing that, you begin to pull away from people without realizing it. You start building invisible walls around your heart because you think distance will protect you from pain. It doesn't. It just isolates you from everything that could have healed you. For years, I carried that guilt like armor, heavy but necessary. I told myself I had to be stronger, colder, less attached. I thought I could keep everyone safe by keeping them at a distance. But love doesn't work like that. You can't protect people from life, no matter how much you care. You can only love them while they're here, imperfectly but completely. River taught me that, not through his life, but through his loss. His death was my first lesson in understanding that love isn't about control or protection. It's about presence, about showing up fully, even when you're scared, even when you know the world can take it all away in an instant. That night changed me forever. It made me wary, quiet, and at times, emotionally unreachable. But it also planted a seed. A painful one, yes, that would grow into a deeper understanding years later. Because life wasn't done teaching me about loss, and the next chapter of my story would prove that heartbreak has layers far deeper than I ever imagined. I thought I'd already faced the worst pain possible, until I fell in love again and learned just how fragile happiness can be. By the time 1998 arrived, I had become skilled at wearing masks, the kind that smile for cameras and say all the right things in interviews. But underneath, I was still carrying River's absence like a shadow that followed me everywhere. That's when I met Jennifer Syme. She was unlike anyone I had ever known, quiet but sharp, independent yet deeply kind. She wasn't drawn to the fame, the money, or the madness that surrounded Hollywood. She saw through all of that. For the first time in years, someone looked past the armor and saw me. It started simply. Two people connecting through music, laughter, and late-night conversations that stretched into dawn. I wasn't looking for love, but somehow, she made me believe in it again. Jennifer had this way of grounding me. While the world saw me as some movie hero, she saw me as a man still figuring life out. She teased me when I got too serious, made me laugh when I forgot how, and reminded me what it felt like to just exist without expectations. We were happy, truly happy, in that effortless, fragile way that makes you afraid to breathe too hard, as if happiness itself might vanish if you hold on too tightly. And then, one morning, we found out she was pregnant. I can still remember the way her face lit up, the tears in her eyes. We were going to have a baby girl. We named her Ava Archer Syme Reeves before she was even born. I had never felt joy like that in my life. For the first time, the future didn't scare me, it inspired me. I would talk to Ava every night, whispering through Jennifer's growing belly, telling her about motorcycles and music, about how the world was a strange but beautiful place. Jennifer would fall asleep with my hand resting over hers, and I'd feel our daughter move. That tiny heartbeat gave me hope, made me believe that maybe life was finally giving me a reason to stop running. But then, everything changed. In the 8th month of pregnancy, during a routine checkup, the doctor couldn't find a heartbeat. I'll never forget the silence that filled that room, that heavy, suffocating silence that says more than words ever could. Ava had died in the womb. We had to go through labor knowing we'd never hear our baby cry. I held her, this tiny, perfect little being, and for a moment, time just stopped. She was beautiful. She looked like both of us. I remember thinking that this wasn't how life was supposed to go. You're not supposed to outlive your child. I looked at Jennifer, shattered and lost, and all I could do was hold her hand and try to survive that impossible moment with her. There are no words that prepare you for that kind of loss. The kind that doesn't just break your heart, it rearranges it forever. After that, nothing was the same. We tried to stay together, but grief changes people. It consumes, isolates, and suffocates. Jennifer couldn't look at me without seeing our daughter. I couldn't look at her without feeling my own failure to protect them both. We drifted apart, not because we stopped loving each other, but because the pain became too heavy to share. And then, in 2001, she died in a car accident. Just like that, gone. The woman who made me believe in love again was suddenly another ghost in my life. I lost my daughter, and then I lost the only person who could truly understand what that loss meant. 2 years. 2 irreplaceable people. For a long time, I lived in silence. I didn't talk about it. I didn't cry in public. I just buried myself in work, hoping that if I kept moving, I wouldn't have to feel the ache that never stopped. But grief doesn't leave you because you're busy. It waits. It lingers. And in time, it teaches you. I learned that life doesn't wait for you to heal. It moves forward, whether you're ready or not. I could let the pain define me, or I could let it shape me into someone who understood love not as a fairy tale, but as something raw, fragile, and sacred. I thought I could escape the pain by throwing myself into work, but when the Matrix came along, I realized I was living a double life, one on screen and one haunted by the past. When the Matrix came into my life, I saw it as a chance to start over, or maybe to hide. The late 90s were a blur of film sets, long nights, and constant motion. I told myself that working was healing, that pouring everything into the craft was noble. But the truth is, I was running from the memories, from the silence of an empty house, from a pain too heavy to face. On screen, I was Neo, a man awakening to the truth of reality. Off screen, I was Keanu, a man trying desperately not to see his own. The irony was brutal. I was playing someone who chose the red pill, someone who faced reality head-on, while I was swallowing blue pills every day, numbing myself with scripts, cameras, and applause. The world celebrated me then. Fame was louder than it had ever been. People saw the success, the premieres, the interviews. They called me the chosen one, the symbol of strength and freedom. But when the cameras shut off, the quiet returned. I'd come home from shooting to a house that echoed. No laughter, no warmth. Just the hum of a refrigerator and the flicker of city lights through the window. It was strange, realizing that you can have everything and still feel like nothing. I had all the things people think bring happiness, money, fame, admiration, but none of it touched the emptiness that lived just behind my chest. There was one night during the filming of The Matrix Revolutions that stays with me. I had worked 16 hours straight. The set was full of people, noise, and movement, but when I got back to my hotel, the silence hit harder than any exhaustion. I looked at myself in the mirror and barely recognized the man staring back. I asked out loud, "What are you so afraid of, Keanu?" And in that quiet room, the answer came back so clearly it scared me. I wasn't afraid of failure. I was afraid of love, of being responsible for someone's happiness again and failing them like before. That realization hit deeper than any bullet time sequence could ever portray. Work became a disguise for fear. Every new project was another way to say, I don't have time for love right now. I told myself I was too busy, too focused, too restless. But really, I was just scared. It's easy to hide behind productivity, to convince yourself that the noise of work means you're living. But silence doesn't lie. And mine told me that I wasn't living at all. I was existing, pretending, keeping busy so I wouldn't have to feel. There's a strange kind of loneliness in success, the kind where everyone knows your name, but no one knows your heart. The deeper I buried myself in work, the more I realized how hollow it felt. I remember filming a scene with the Oracle. She tells Neo he's not the one. And as I stood there in character, I felt this chill crawl up my spine. That's exactly how I felt about my own life. Maybe I wasn't the one who gets to have lasting love or a family. Maybe that wasn't part of my story. That thought lingered for years, whispering in my ear every time I tried to open up to someone new. The fear of repeating old pain kept me locked inside a version of myself that looked strong on the outside but was breaking quietly inside. It took me years to understand that professional success can never replace emotional connection. You can't win enough awards, buy enough houses, or work enough hours to fill the space left by love. You can only face it, the ache, the longing, the vulnerability, and try again. But at that time, I wasn't ready to face it. I told myself I was fine being alone. That lie was easier than admitting I was terrified to love again. But fame has a strange way of testing what's real, and soon I'd learn that the hardest part of being known by everyone is realizing how few people truly see you. Fame is a strange thing. It gives you everything you thought you wanted while quietly taking away the things you need most. In the 2000s and 2010s, my life became a blur of flashing cameras, red carpets, and scripts stacked higher than I could read. From the outside, people saw success. They saw the smile, the suits, the calm composure. But what they couldn't see was how much energy it took just to keep that mask in place. Because behind every public appearance, there was a quiet man asking himself if anyone in the room truly saw him. Fame teaches you how to perform off-screen just as much as it does on-screen. Every handshake, every conversation, every dinner carried an invisible question. Do they like me, or do they like the idea of me? I started noticing patterns in how people approached me. Some were drawn to the mystery, others to the fame. But very few were curious about the man who liked to read alone in small coffee shops or take midnight motorcycle rides just to feel something real. I developed this strange defense mechanism, a quiet test I'd run without people knowing. I'd mention simple things, like how I spent my weekends fixing my bike or sitting at home watching an old movie. If they seemed bored or changed the subject, I knew it wasn't real. If their eyes lit up, if they wanted to know more about those quiet moments, I'd let my guard down just a little. But that test rarely went well. More often than not, the sparkle faded the moment they realized I wasn't going to play the part of Keanu Reeves, the celebrity. Over time, I became hyper-aware of everything, every word, every gesture, every compliment. What once felt flattering started to feel suspicious. Was that smile genuine? Was that affection real? It's exhausting living like that, analyzing every moment, doubting sincerity, fearing that trust has become a luxury you can't afford. Fame didn't just make me question others, it made me question myself. I caught myself pulling away from good people simply because I couldn't tell what their intentions were. I became a skeptic in my own life story. Even moments that should have been warm or joyful felt staged, like I was performing in a movie I never auditioned for. There was one night that made everything crystal clear. I was having dinner with someone, a woman who seemed intelligent, beautiful, full of promise. But halfway through our conversation, she started talking about how incredible it would be if we attended public events together, how we'd look perfect on magazine covers. And in that instant, something inside me broke a little. It wasn't anger, it was sadness. Because I realized she wasn't talking about me, she was talking about the image of me. I smiled politely, finished the meal, and walked home alone. When I looked at my reflection that night, I didn't see an actor. I saw a man wondering if genuine love was even possible anymore in a world that profits off illusion. After that, I started craving simplicity like oxygen. I didn't want grand gestures or glamorous events. I wanted late-night conversations over burnt toast. I wanted someone who didn't care about premieres or headlines, someone who found comfort in silence rather than attention. I realized I had to strip everything down, the fame, the money, the reputation, and learn to just be Keanu. Not the movie star, but the flawed, quiet, awkward man who sometimes still gets nervous talking about feelings. The woman I was looking for wasn't someone who wanted to be seen with me. I wanted someone who wanted to see me, the real me, away from the lights, the noise, and the masks. That's when I began to understand that fame wasn't the enemy. Fear was. The fear of being misunderstood. The fear of being loved for the wrong reasons. And the only way to fight that fear wasn't to hide behind walls, but to risk showing up as myself, even if that meant losing people who preferred the illusion. Fame taught me something unexpected. When everyone knows your name, authenticity becomes the rarest form of love. And it wasn't until I turned 50, while filming John Wick of all things, that I finally realized I'd spent 2 decades learning how to fight, when what I really needed to learn was how to love. Turning 50 was a quiet kind of awakening. It wasn't a sudden epiphany or some cinematic moment of revelation. It was gradual, like the slow dawn light creeping through a window you didn't know was open. I was working on John Wick at the time, a film about grief, vengeance, and the depth of loss. On paper, it was just another role. But as I slipped into the mind of that character, a man who had lost everything he loved, I realized how much of myself I had hidden behind the lines I spoke. John's story wasn't just fiction, it was a mirror reflecting my own unspoken pain. Every scene of loss, every moment of silence between the gunfire, felt eerily familiar. I wasn't acting anymore. I was remembering. It's strange how art sometimes holds a truth you're not ready to say out loud. I began to notice that, beneath all the choreography and violence, John Wick was really a love story. One about grief so deep it transforms into purpose. As I worked through those emotions, something started to shift inside me. For years, I had believed that pain was something to escape, something to bury beneath work, success, and control. But that role forced me to feel it again, to sit with it, to acknowledge it, to let it breathe. And somewhere between takes, between the rehearsed fights and the quiet moments in my trailer, I realized that pain and love are inseparable. The deeper you love, the deeper you can hurt. But the hurt itself is proof that love was real. There was one particular day I'll never forget. We were filming a scene where John looks at old photos of his wife, the one who's gone, and the director asked me to think of someone I had truly loved and lost. I thought of Jennifer. I thought of our daughter, Ava. I thought of River. And before I knew it, real tears started falling. Not scripted tears, not rehearsed emotion, real, raw grief pouring out after years of silence. The set went quiet. The crew stood still. And for the first time in decades, I didn't try to stop it. I let it happen. I let myself feel. Those tears weren't just for loss. They were for gratitude, for the privilege of having loved so deeply that losing them could still make me cry after all those years. That day changed something fundamental in me. I stopped seeing love as a battlefield and started seeing it as a lesson. For too long, I had treated it like something to defend myself against, calculating, protecting, retreating at the first sign of pain. But love isn't a war. It's a dance. You can't win it or lose it. You can only move with it, trust the rhythm, and let yourself be led sometimes. I realized that vulnerability, the thing I had avoided for half my life, wasn't weakness. It was courage. The willingness to risk pain for connection. The bravery to stand unguarded, knowing it might hurt again, but choosing to try anyway. When I looked back at my life, I understood that every heartbreak had taught me something essential. Losing River taught me that love isn't about protection. Losing Jennifer and Ava taught me that love is fleeting but never wasted. And John Wick, strangely enough, taught me that the pain of love is not something to hide from. It's something to honor. Because those who have loved deeply and lost still carry something beautiful inside them. Proof that they were capable of giving, of caring, of feeling something real in a world that often feels artificial. At 50, standing on that film set, I stopped running from my past. For the first time, I looked at my reflection and saw not a broken man, but a survivor, someone who had been shaped by pain but not destroyed by it. And in that quiet realization, I knew I was ready. Ready to love again. Not because the pain had faded, but because I had finally learned that pain was part of love's language, the echo that reminds you it was real. And just when I thought love was a chapter one had closed for good, life surprised me, not with fireworks, but with something far more powerful, peace. When Alexandra Grant came into my life, it wasn't the kind of love story that movies are made of. There was no lightning strike, no dramatic slow-motion moment that changed everything. Instead, it was quiet, the kind of connection that feels familiar, like you've known someone your entire life even though you've just met. We met through work, collaborating on art and books. She was an artist, a thinker, someone who saw the world not through judgment but through curiosity. There was something steady about her energy, something calm and grounding that made me slow down without realizing it. 4 years, I'd lived like a man walking through a storm, and suddenly, I found myself in the eye of it, still, quiet, and safe. At first, it was purely creative. We talked about art, language, and meaning, not fame, not movies, not the noise that had defined most of my world. Working with her felt effortless, like creating from a place that wasn't performance but truth. And slowly, without trying, something deeper began to grow between us. It wasn't explosive, it wasn't rushed, it was patient. I didn't feel the need to impress her or hide behind charm. With Alexandra, I didn't feel like an actor. I felt like a person again. I could be awkward, I could be silent, I could just be. That's when I realized how long it had been since I'd allowed anyone to see the unpolished version of me. The man beneath the roles, beneath the armor, beneath the grief. But even then, the old patterns tried to creep in. There were moments when I'd catch myself pulling back, retreating into that familiar shell. Not because I didn't trust her, but because I didn't trust myself not to ruin it. I had this fear, this deeply embedded voice that whispered, asterisk, what if you hurt her? What if you lose her too? Asterisk, it's strange how trauma lingers in the corners of your heart, how even when you find something good, you still look for signs it might fall apart. But one night, during a quiet conversation about life and love, Alexandra said something that stopped me cold. She looked at me with that calm, knowing expression and said, Keanu, you know you don't have to earn love, right? You just have to allow it. Those words hit me harder than anything I'd ever heard. I didn't have to earn love. I just had to allow it. For decades, I had treated every relationship like an audition, trying to prove I was good enough, trying to show I was worthy. But love isn't a reward, it's an invitation. It's not about being perfect, or having healed completely, or becoming some version of yourself that no longer bleeds. It's about being seen as you are, wounds, scars, history, and all, and still being chosen. That night, something inside me shifted for good. I realized that true love doesn't erase the past, it embraces it. It doesn't fix what's broken, it teaches you to live beautifully with the cracks. Alexandra taught me that opening your heart again doesn't mean betraying the memory of those you've lost. It means honoring them, showing that love didn't die with them, that it continues, transformed, reborn in new forms. For the first time in my life, love didn't feel like a battle to survive. It felt like a space to rest, to breathe, to grow. With her, I learned that peace can be just as powerful as passion. That quiet companionship can be more profound than chaos. That sometimes, love doesn't need to burn, it can simply warm. I stopped seeing love as something that had to prove itself through grand gestures or intense emotions. Instead, I started to see it as something sacred in its simplicity. Morning coffee together, quiet walks, shared silence that doesn't feel empty. Love, I realized, isn't about finding someone who fills your void. It's about walking beside someone who understands your emptiness and loves you through it. With Alexandra, I didn't just find love again. I found freedom. The freedom to be human. But finding peace doesn't mean the story ends there. It just means you've learned to listen. And in that stillness, I began to see the patterns of my past and what they had really been trying to teach me all along. When I finally slowed down enough to listen, I began to see a pattern, a story I had been unknowingly writing my entire life. Every loss, every heartbreak, every lonely night had been a teacher. And though I would have given anything to erase some of those moments, I realized they were the very ones that shaped my understanding of what love truly is. For so long, I thought love was about finding the right person, the one who would fill all the empty spaces, heal the wounds, and make everything feel complete. But now, I know that love isn't about completion. It's about connection. It's about two whole people choosing to walk beside each other, knowing they can survive alone, but choosing not to. The first thing I learned is that authenticity is everything. When you've spent your life performing, pretending becomes easy. But authenticity, being seen exactly as you are, no script, no character, no mask, that takes courage. I used to think I had to present the best version of myself to be loved, but real love doesn't want perfection. It wants truth. It wants the quiet mornings when you're tired and unshaven, the moments of doubt and clumsiness, the laughter that comes from things that make no sense. I want someone who loves me not in spite of my flaws, but because of them, because they make me human. The second lesson came from years of resisting pain. Vulnerability is strength. I once saw it as weakness, something to be guarded against. But the older I got, the more I realized that vulnerability is the only bridge to genuine connection. To love someone is to hand them a piece of your heart and trust that they won't crush it, even though they could. It's choosing to risk being broken because connection is worth more than comfort. I don't want to be with someone who's never been hurt. I want someone who knows what it feels like to be broken and still chooses to love anyway. The third lesson is about grief. Grief, I've learned, isn't the enemy of love, it's proof of it. Shared grief creates a depth that joy alone never can. People who have suffered understand life differently. They don't take peace for granted, they find beauty in small, ordinary moments. A smile, a hand, a breath. Those who have seen the darkness know how sacred the light is. The woman I want beside me isn't untouched by loss, she's shaped by it. Because when two people who've known pain find each other, they love differently, quietly, fiercely, and without conditions. Another truth that revealed itself is that love doesn't demand possession. It took me decades to learn that loving someone doesn't mean holding on to them tightly. Real love gives space, it breathes. It allows two people to grow separately and together at the same time. The goal isn't to become one person, but to become two people who choose each other over and over, not because they need to, but because they want to. Love is not a cage. It's a choice that renews itself every morning. And perhaps the most important lesson of all, simplicity is the greatest luxury. The world sells us this idea that love has to be grand, dramatic, full of fireworks and constant excitement. But the truth is, the most beautiful parts of love are often quiet. A shared silence that feels safe. The warmth of a hand resting on yours. The sound of laughter in the middle of a bad day. The peace that comes from being completely yourself in someone's presence. That's the kind of love I want. The kind that doesn't demand attention but feels like home. Looking back, I can see that everything I thought was breaking me was actually building me. Every loss, every heartbreak, every lonely night was preparing me to love differently, not desperately, but deliberately. I no longer want love to fill a void. I want love to expand what's already whole. Because the truth is, when you finally make peace with your past, you stop searching for someone to save you, and start looking for someone to share your peace with. But peace doesn't mean perfection, it means readiness. And for the first time in my life, I finally understood what it means to be ready for love. Readiness isn't about having your life perfectly figured out. It's not about waiting until the past stops hurting or until every wound is healed. Readiness is about reaching a point where you can look at your scars and no longer see them as signs of damage, but as proof that you survived. For years, I thought love would come when I was better, when I had less baggage, less pain, fewer ghosts. But the truth is, love doesn't wait for perfection. It meets you in the middle of your mess. I realized that being ready for love means being honest about who you are, what you've lost, and what you still fear. It means saying, "This is me, imperfect, complicated, but willing." Because love doesn't require you to be whole to begin. It just asks that you show up. In my younger years, I chased the idea of love like it was something external, something to find, to possess, to prove. But as time passed, I began to understand that love starts inside you. It's the acceptance that you are already enough, even without someone else's validation. It's the quiet confidence that you can stand alone, not because you want to, but because you've learned how. Only then can you truly choose someone, not out of loneliness, but out of desire. When two people meet from a place of completeness, love becomes partnership, not dependency. It becomes a shared journey instead of a rescue mission. Timing, too, plays its role, but I've learned that timing isn't everything. I used to think love was all about fate, about meeting the right person at the right moment. But I've seen how two people can cross paths at the perfect time and still not be ready for each other. Readiness is more powerful than timing because it comes from within. It's the difference between wanting love and being able to handle it. You can meet someone extraordinary, but if you're still living in fear, you'll find a way to push them away. I did that more times than I care to admit. I'd meet someone kind, genuine, and patient, but I'd still retreat into the same cycle of self-protection. It took me decades to see that love can't bloom in soil watered by fear. At 60, I've learned to appreciate love as a daily act, not a destination. It's not about grand declarations or promises of forever. It's about small, deliberate choices, the choice to listen, to forgive, to show up even on the hard days. Real love doesn't erase pain. It transforms it. It doesn't guarantee that you'll never hurt again, but it gives you the strength to heal together. I no longer dream of the kind of love that feels like fire. I want the kind that feels like sunlight. The kind that warms you slowly, quietly, and stays even when the world gets cold. I've also learned that being ready for love means being ready to lose it. That might sound strange, but it's the truth. You can't fully love someone if you're constantly afraid of the pain their loss might bring. True love requires the courage to let go of control, to love with open hands, not clenched fists. Because love, by its nature, is fragile. It's a risk every single time. But the beauty lies in choosing it anyway. When you can love someone knowing they might leave, or life might change, that's when you've understood what love truly is. So now, I don't search for the person who will make me happy. Happiness isn't something another person can give you. It's something you bring to the table and share. What I look for is someone whose presence makes peace feel even more peaceful. Someone who doesn't complete me, but complements me. Someone who understands that love isn't about fixing what's broken, but about growing together day by day. That's readiness, not perfection, not certainty, just the quiet, fearless willingness to try again. But after all these years, one final truth remained. Love was never about finding the one. It was about becoming the kind of person who could finally recognize them. For most of my life, I thought love was about finding the right person. That one soul who would understand every part of me, who would somehow make everything make sense. But as I got older, I realized I had it backward. Love isn't about finding the right person, it's about becoming the right person. Becoming someone capable of loving without fear, without expectation, without needing the other person to carry the weight of your happiness. Because if you don't know who you are, if you haven't made peace with your own heart, no one else can fill that void for you. I learned that lesson the hard way, through heartbreak, silence, and years of running from myself. Becoming the right person doesn't mean becoming perfect. It means becoming real. It's about looking in the mirror and accepting every version of yourself. The hopeful one, the broken one, the one who made mistakes, and the one who's still learning. For me, that meant forgiving the younger man who didn't know how to stay, who was afraid of love because he thought love would always leave. It meant embracing the grief that shaped me, instead of pretending it didn't. And it meant understanding that love, in its truest form, isn't about never getting hurt. It's about finding someone who's willing to heal with you when you do. At 60, I don't need love to be fireworks anymore. I want it to be steady, intentional, and kind. The kind of love where two people can sit together in silence and still feel understood. The kind where laughter is effortless and forgiveness comes naturally. I want the kind of relationship where we're not trying to complete each other, but rather to inspire each other to grow, separately and together. I've realized that love isn't something that happens to you. It's something you build, piece by piece, choice by choice, day by day. You don't just fall in love once. You keep falling over and over every time you choose to show up, even when it's hard. And maybe that's the real secret, that love isn't just a feeling, it's a decision. Feelings come and go. They're waves. But commitment, that's the tide. It stays. I've seen so many people chase passion, thinking that's what love is. But passion fades if it's not grounded in respect, patience, and compassion. Mature love, the kind I want now, isn't about constant excitement. It's about peace. It's about waking up every morning and knowing that no matter what life throws at you, you have someone by your side who's with you, not just next to you. I've also learned that the walls we build to protect ourselves from pain, they keep love out, too. For years, I thought being strong meant being guarded. But real strength comes from openness. From saying, yes, I've been hurt. Yes, I might be hurt again. But I'm still willing. Because every time you choose love, you're choosing courage over comfort. You're saying to the universe, I believe in something bigger than fear. And that belief, that stubborn, hopeful willingness to love again, is what makes us human. So now, I live differently. I love differently. I don't see love as a rescue or a fantasy. I see it as a practice, something you nurture, something you show through presence, kindness, and patience. It's not about how many times you've been broken. It's about how many times you're brave enough to open your heart again. I don't know what the future holds, and I don't need to. All I know is that life is too short to let fear dictate your heart. Because even if love ends, even if it breaks you, it's still worth it. Always. Every single time. So if you're listening to this, wherever you are, don't wait until you're unbroken to love. Love is what makes you whole. And in the end, no matter how many times it breaks your heart, it's the only thing that truly matters.